without warning, just tons of earth in a single movement. They are landslides, crushing waves of destruction from nature. Prepare for the most intense landslide disasters ever seen. The Kulin Highway in Taiwan became a catastrophic zone in June 2024, when intense rains unleashed a geological fury. The landslide released 10,000 cubic meters of debris, enough to fill about 150 containers. Spectators described the sound as thunder roaring from the earth when the hillside collapsed, overcoming the protective barriers and burying the main road. Multiple support structures crumbled under the assault as transportation came to a standstill. For weeks, recovery teams worked tirelessly in a desperate 72-hour race to restore connectivity, with costs soaring to $15 billion. At the beginning of 2024, terror gripped Shimla when the monsoon rains unleashed the fury of a mountain. The landslide near Rome was twice as powerful as any other the locals had seen in 2 decades, destroying 200 meters of the National Highway 707 in a matter of minutes. Multiple retaining walls crumbled like paper when the ground moved with unstoppable force. Emergency teams raced against time, removing the staggering amount of 1,000 cubic meters of debris, enough to fill a municipal water tank that supplies a community. Even after 48 hours of uninterrupted work, the area remained a trap of geological instability and rapid expansion. In March 2023, the Ecuadorian canton of Alausi faced the terrifying power of nature when 500,000 cubic meters of earth came down, equivalent to about 7,143 fully loaded freight cars. The incredible force of the landslide uprooted trees and hurled them over 1 kilometer, creating a 150 meters wide wall of ruin. The catastrophe turned 24 hectares of land into an aerial, destroyed 163 houses, and affected more than 500 families. The government invested $5 million in immediate aid, but the scars of this community would take years to heal. The Chinese province of Sichuan witnessed catastrophic destruction in 2017 when a massive landslide blocked 2 kilometers of river and destroyed 6 kilometers of road infrastructure. The monstrous landslide moved the incredible amount of 8 million cubic meters of earth, enough to fill more than 3,200 Olympic-sized swimming pools at a speed of 65 kph. The landslide buried 62 houses in the village of Shinmo under piles of debris 10 meters high. The catastrophe created a natural dam in the river, threatening the areas downstream with even greater destruction. The Chinese government mobilized more than 2,500 people and sent emergency aid to the devastated region. The coastal paradise of Brazil turned into a winter in 2023 when record rainfall of 600 millimeters, which exceeded the monthly average in a single day, unleashed the fury of nature. As the catastrophe spread across the state of Sao Paulo, meteorologists classified it as a once-in-100 years event. The destruction was terrifying. Hundreds of houses and buildings disappeared, while 50 roads vanished under mountains of debris. More than 2,400 people lost their homes, and several valleys were filled with mud up to depths of 4 meters. The magnitude of the devastation led the president of Brazil to the affected areas, allocating $25 million for immediate assistance, while 200 emergency workers and military personnel rushed to provide aid. Norcote, Auckland faced a catastrophe in 2017 when prolonged rains triggered a monstrous landslide that displaced 20,000 cubic meters of earth. The element carved a path 40 meters wide and plunged to depths of 15 meters. That's deeper than a 4-story building. The destruction extended along 2 kilometers of road, burying everything under 3 meters of debris. But nature wasn't done with surprises. The landslide revealed an incredible discovery, as drone images showed fossilized tree stumps estimated to be over 10,000 years old. The road to recovery was long, with 6 months of initial stabilization work followed by a thorough geological assessment and reconstruction. May 2018 unleashed hell in the Chinese autonomous county of Mogyeongi when a landslide displaced 100,000 cubic meters of earth. The catastrophe buried a mountain road in a matter of seconds, while debris flows reached terrifying speeds of 80 kph. The landslide caused 15 meters deep destruction, cutting access to 12 villages and plunging hundreds of travelers into chaos. Local authorities launched an immediate response, with heavy machinery working for 48 hours to restore access. But full recovery took 2 weeks and uninterrupted cleanup operations. The iconic Highway 1 in California, near Big Sur, faced geological fury in 2021 when atmospheric river storms triggered a catastrophic landslide. A 45.7-meter section of the highway disappeared completely, while the damage extended along 37 kilometers of the coastal route. The landslide formed a new peninsula extending 76.2 meters into the Pacific Ocean, reaching depths of 15.2 meters. The destruction forced the closure of one of the most devastating highways in recent history, which lasted 8 months, while Carl Trumps attempted to rebuild it using advanced engineering techniques. The province of South Kivu, Congo, suffered a catastrophe in May 2023 when torrential rains triggered landslides with rocks weighing up to 20 tons. Destruction spread over 6.5 kilometers square and mudflows reached a depth of 5 meters. The floodwaters reached 4 meters in populated areas, and more than 3,000 houses collapsed under the force of nature. The catastrophe displaced more than 8,000 people as international aid organizations rushed to coordinate rescue and relief efforts in this devastated region. The province of Yunnan faced the wrath of nature in January 2024, when satellite images revealed the imminence of the catastrophe as a debris mudslide prevailed over the city in the morning at 5:55 a.m. Liangxi village vanished under 100,000 cubic meters of earth, enough to fill 40 Olympic pools. The landslide's fury devoured 47 buildings over 25 hectares. That's larger than 35 football fields. With more than 500 people evacuated and over 1,000 rescuers deployed, 33 excavators, the race against time began when the dust settled. The cost of the disaster amounted to the staggering figure of $50 million in material and infrastructure losses. Petropolis, Brazil, faced nature's unstoppable force in 2022 when a 300 meters wide valley of mud and debris swept through the region. The destructive flow reached terrifying speeds of 70 kph, faster than urban traffic. The catastrophe left 50,000 residents displaced and more than 1,200 homes under the assault of 200,000 cubic meters of earth. The electrical infrastructure disappeared in the affected areas while 180 firefighters and rescue workers raced against time. The government declared a state of emergency and allocated $30 million to relief efforts. Scientists pointed to climate change as the villain, warning that increasingly erratic rainfall patterns threaten Brazil's future. February 2023 brought terror to Peru when intense rains destabilized the slopes, unleashing a beast that devoured an area of 1 kilometer squared. The debris flow plunged to depths of 3 meters while traveling at highway speeds of 50 kph. Entire towns in Arequipa disappeared under the mud and rocks as the destruction spread over 15 kilometers of roads and farmland. The massive landslide destroyed 30 houses and blocked major transportation routes for weeks. The emergency response was massive, with 500 people deployed to fight against this geological nightmare. The Johnson Creek area in Oregon became an apocalyptic scene in 2015 when heavy rains unleashed a monstrous 200 meters wide landslide. The catastrophe threatened 240 homes and caused cracks with an astonishing depth of 30 meters, taller than the height of an 8-story building. The residents described the scene as apocalyptic, with uprooted trees and destroyed houses. Local authorities declared a state of emergency, while volunteers and emergency teams worked tirelessly to provide shelter for displaced families. Scientists used drone technology to assess the destruction and identify future risk areas in this vulnerable region. The district of Chaven de Huantar in Peru faced a disaster in July 2022, when a massive landslide generated dust clouds visible from miles away. Such power covered a 5 kilometers area while moving at 40 kph, shifting an estimated 50,000 cubic meters of earth, enough to fill a medium-sized football stadium. Despite the dramatic nature of the scene, early evacuation measures saved lives as emergency services rushed to remove 280 residents from the danger zone. The landslide left 150 buildings damaged in its wake, requiring weeks of cleanup operations to restore normalcy in the devastated region. When torrential rains hit Ximen County in China's Hunan province in 2020, they unleashed a geological force that would transform the landscape. The landslide displaced 80,000 cubic meters of earth, creating a terrifying wall of mud and rocks 12 meters high, taller than a 3-story building. Thanks to their early warning system, the residents escaped just in time, but the main transportation routes disappeared under the destruction. Local authorities sent emergency teams, and geology experts monitored the nearby slopes to prevent further disasters in this unstable region. March 2023 brought catastrophe to the Peruvian region of La Libertad when intense rains triggered a landslide that would engulf 60% of the city of Retones. The powerful landslide displaced 120,000 cubic meters of earth, enough to fill the internal volume of a Boeing 747 through a devastating 2 kilometers wide path. 60 houses disappeared in an instant while 450 rescuers worked with sweat. The situation became so desperate that helicopters had to deliver supplies to the isolated area, as traditional access routes disappeared under the destruction. The mountainous regions of Papua New Guinea trembled in May 2024 when heavy rains triggered a catastrophic landslide that created a debris field 1 kilometer wide. The element displaced 150,000 cubic meters of earth while carving paths up to 8 meters deep, taller than a 2-story building. The main roads connecting the mountainous regions disappeared under the onslaught, while the landslide created a natural dam. The destruction left such an enormous scar that satellite images captured it from space. International humanitarian aid organizations rushed to provide support in the rescue efforts. The landscape of Meghalaya was transformed into chaos in 2022 when unprecedented rains of more than 800 millimeters in 24 hours triggered multiple landslides. Destruction swept away 50 kilometers of roads, while traditional warning signs, like unusual animal behavior, proved prophetic. Days before the catastrophe, over 50 houses collapsed under nature's onslaught, while sequential chain reactions of failures rippled across multiple slopes. The landslides created temporary natural dams, forming new lakes that remained for weeks. The capital region of Sierra Leone faced devastation in 2017, when 3 days of torrential rains triggered a mudslide that would transform the landscape forever. Nature displaced 300,000 cubic meters of earth while moving at terrifying speeds of 70 kph. The destruction carved a path 5 kilometers long and buried more than 300 buildings with mud and debris to a depth of 6 meters. The catastrophe affected 3 kilometers squared of land, leaving 3,000 people homeless and raising fears of waterborne diseases, as the region was threatened by new floods. Tropical storm Meji struck the Philippines in April 2022, triggering multiple landslides that displaced 200,000 cubic meters of earth. The landslides rushed downhill at 55 kph, burying entire villages under their fury. Over a stretch of 10 kilometers of affected areas, the destruction swallowed 400 houses, while mud deposits reached depths of 3 meters. Emergency services launched more than 300 rescue operations with boats and helicopters, while 17,000 people fled in search of safe places. In the end, the rain from Storm Meji displaced more than 1 million people in one of the largest Silatina disasters. Kinshasa, the capital of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, faced nature's wrath in 2019, when prolonged rains triggered a landslide displacing 150,000 cubic meters. The catastrophe affected multiple residential areas under the mud, which reached depths of 4 meters long. 600 rescuers provided assistance, while the government pledged to improve urban drainage systems to prevent future disasters in this vulnerable region. Typhoon Christine sowed geological terror in the Philippines in 2024, triggering massive landslides that covered roads with 5 meters of debris. The destruction created multiple debris flows up to 2 kilometers in length that destroyed 250 structures in the affected regions. The government deployed military units and rescue teams while 12,000 residents fled as emergency centers filled with thousands of displaced families, as communities were caught in the devastating onslaught of this typhoon. Central and southern Bosnia faced geological fury in 2024, when heavy rains triggered landslides that transformed villages. More than 5,000 residents fled as the destruction consumed 100 hectares of farmland, larger than 75 football fields. The catastrophe spread over 3 kilometers squared, while the mud and debris reached terrifying depths of 4 meters, enough to swallow a small house. The landslide destroyed 120 buildings, including historical structures, resulting in losses exceeding 20 million euros. This catastrophe affected the heart of Bosnia's cultural heritage and left scars that will take years to heal. Waukegan County, in the state of Washington, became a catastrophic zone in 2020, when 178 millimeters of rain in a single day unleashed geological chaos. A massive landslide blocked State Route 4, while fallen trees plunged thousands of people into darkness. The ground became so unstable that immediate cleanup operations were impossible. The engineers watched helplessly as the continuous rains and the instability delayed the cleanup tasks. The catastrophe raised alarming questions about the role of deforestation in the instability of slopes, as the area had increased logging activity. Hiroshima faced the fury of nature in 2014, when torrential rains triggered simultaneous landslides on the outskirts of the city. Dozens of houses disappeared when the mud and rocks reached devastating depths of 8 meters, higher than a 2-story building. The catastrophe primarily devastated recently urbanized residential areas, raising serious questions about urban planning in regions exposed to risks. More than 2,500 people, including the self-defense forces, joined the massive rescue operation to fight against this geological nightmare. The city of Nagas witnessed the catastrophe in 2018, when days of heavy rain combined with quarrying activities to unleash destruction. The landslide swallowed more than 80 hectares of land, larger than 60 football fields, while locals described hearing a thunderous roar before the ground gave way. The mud reached 5 meters deep, and hundreds of people fled their homes. Search and rescue teams deployed dogs and machinery in a desperate mission to locate the citizens. The catastrophe forced the authorities to suspend extraction activities throughout the region, as the communities recounted the outcome of interfering with nature. In 2024, the western region of Cameroon was plunged into terror when prolonged torrential rains triggered a powerful landslide on the Shangtuola Road. The catastrophe created a 300 meters wide debris field, disrupting a vital economic route and isolating several villages. This is the third significant landslide to occur in Cameroon in 2 years, highlighting the increasing frequency of these devastating events. The army rushed to aid rescue operations, while communities struggled to reconnect with the outside world. The Nairobi-Narok Mamai Road in Kenya faced destruction in 2018, when persistent rains triggered a landslide that would divide one of Kenya's busiest highways. The landslide created a deep chasm, completely paralyzing transportation, while nearby floods displaced hundreds of residents. The companies that relied on this vital route suffered massive losses, as the destruction threatened supply chains within Kenya. Emergency teams carried out temporary repairs within days, but permanent repairs required months of engineering work to restore this infrastructure. The critical Sonkoshi landslide in Nepal in 2014 triggered a catastrophe that threatened 2 nations. The monstrous landslide blocked the Sonkoshi River, creating a natural dam and a temporary lake 3 kilometers in length. The catastrophe covered entire villages and disrupted hydroelectric projects, while communities in the Indian state of Bihar evacuated for fear of the sudden collapse of the dam. The situation became so severe that the Nepalese army used controlled explosions to create a safe water channel, and this international crisis prompted urgent talks between Nepal and India on disaster response cooperation. The Venezuelan region of the El Limon River faced destruction in 2022 when torrential rains triggered a landslide that ran at 55 kph. The element carved a devastating path 5 kilometers long while the mud and debris reached terrifying depths of 6 meters, higher than the two-story building. Hundreds of houses disappeared under the earth while 1,000 residents fled for their safety. The government rushed to provide temporary housing while committing to rebuild these devastated communities. The Kegel district in Sri Lanka faced one of its worst disasters in 2016, when Cyclone Rono triggered multiple landslides. The destruction rushed to 60 kph across an area of 2 kilometers squared. The catastrophe forced 2,500 residents to flee while emergency services and military personnel launched massive rescue operations. This catastrophe became a wake-up call for Sri Lanka and forced the government to reconsider housing construction in mountainous regions. Those were truly moments of nature's brute force. Which video has impacted you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new videos. See you!